The music from the neighborhood block party was abruptly cut short, replaced by a silence so profound you could practically hear the heartbeat of every single person present. Laughter and music that had filled the air moments ago evaporated in an instant, replaced by the unmistakable crackle of tension. The reason for this sudden, bone-chilling hush? Karen Mitchell's voice, a voice so sharp and scornful it sliced through the warm, joyful atmosphere like a jagged blade. She stood there, hands planted firmly on her hips, a smirk playing on her lips as she fixed her steely gaze on my son Tommy, who was sitting in his wheelchair, his face aglow just moments earlier with the thrill of games and laughter. Now though, he stared up at her with wide, confused eyes, her cruel words hanging in the air like a dark cloud. The words she spat out were so vile, so unthinkable, that for a moment the entire neighborhood seemed frozen in place. Then I heard a single, incredulous whisper break the heavy silence. "Did you really just say that?" It was enough to shake the partygoers from their stunned daze. Karen's smug smile twitched, faltering ever so slightly as she realized she hadn't struck the nerve she'd expected. Instead of agreement or laughter, she was met with an onslaught of horrified stares and furrowed brows. A ripple of anger rolled through the crowd like a gathering storm. Within seconds, a protective wall of neighbors had formed around my son, shielding him from Karen's venom. It was in that moment I knew Karen had finally crossed a line so bright and glaring that there was no turning back. She had just signed her own social death warrant, and she didn't even know it yet. But to truly understand how we got here, you need to know the whole story. 3 months earlier, my wife, Sarah, and I had moved into Willowbrook Estates with Tommy. We were drawn in by the promise of quiet streets, well-kept lawns, and a tight-knit community. It felt like a perfect place for a fresh start. Tommy, who'd been paralyzed from the waist down after a car accident when he was 4, was our brave little fighter. He never let his wheelchair slow him down or dampen his spirit. His laughter was like sunshine, and his smile could light up even the gloomiest day. Most of our new neighbors were wonderful, the kind of people who showed up with warm casseroles and offers to help us settle in. They asked about Tommy's hobbies and offered playdates for their kids. It felt like home. Then there was Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, a woman who wore her title like a crown and used it like a weapon. From the moment we arrived, she let us know exactly how she felt about special accommodations, like the wheelchair ramp we'd installed, despite it being well within the HOA's regulations. She'd mutter snide remarks as she walked by, things like, "There goes the property values," or, "Some people think the rules don't apply to them." I tried to ignore her at first. Maybe she was just a busybody, I told myself. Maybe she was just one of those people who thrived on other people's misery. But as the weeks passed, her true colors shone through like poison seeping into a well. She scrutinized every inch of our yard, sending nitpicky emails about weeds or the precise angle of our mailbox. When the neighborhood newsletter went out, she made sure to add a note about keeping up appearances and maintaining the integrity of our community, with a pointed glance in our direction. Still, we tried to focus on the good. We didn't want to let one sour apple spoil our dream of belonging. Tommy was adjusting so well, making friends and finding ways to join in on every game. He never once let his wheelchair stop him from chasing after adventure. That's why, on that sunny Saturday afternoon in June, we were all smiles. The annual block party was in full swing. The smell of barbecue wafted through the air, kids' laughter echoed across the green, and neighbors mingled, catching up after the long winter. Tables groaned under the weight of homemade pies and trays of sandwiches. Tommy was in his element, racing around in his wheelchair, playing a modified relay game the other parents had cleverly set up. He held the baton like a champion, his eyes bright with excitement. There was even a seated version of musical chairs that had everyone giggling, Tommy included. I remember glancing over at Sarah, her eyes sparkling with pride and relief as she watched our boy being included, being celebrated. It felt like we'd finally found our place. But Karen had been watching from the sidelines, her face growing darker with each peal of laughter, each squeal of delight from the kids. I could practically see the steam rising from her ears. Finally, she couldn't hold back any longer. She marched over to the games, her lips pursed so tightly they nearly disappeared. Her voice cracked through the laughter like a whip. "This is absolutely ridiculous," she barked, her voice carrying across the party. "We're holding back all the normal kids just to accommodate one child who clearly doesn't belong in these activities. This special treatment is ruining the party for everyone else." The words were so venomous, so shockingly cruel, they seemed to hang in the air like an evil spell. Tommy's smile disappeared, confusion and hurt clouding his face. My heart twisted in my chest, a fierce protectiveness welling up inside me. Before I could even open my mouth, though, someone else beat me to it. Lisa Chin, whose daughter was Tommy's classmate, stepped forward like a warrior queen, her eyes blazing. "Did you just tell an 8-year-old child that he doesn't belong?" she demanded, her voice shaking with righteous fury. Karen's smugness only grew. "I'm simply stating facts," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "These games are meant for children who can actually participate properly. We're slowing everything down for one child and ruining the experience for everyone else." That's when the phones came out. One by one, people around us lifted their phones, hitting the record button as if on cue. Karen's eyes darted around, panic flickering across her face. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "Oh, please," she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Put your phones away. I'm the HOA president and I have every right to ensure our community events run smoothly. If certain families can't accept that their children have limitations, perhaps they should find a more suitable neighborhood." The air around us crackled with fury. Parents who'd been quietly watching stepped forward, forming a protective circle around Tommy. It was a moment of pure, defiant unity. Mike Rodriguez, a lawyer who lived 3 houses down, spoke up, his voice calm but full of steel. "Karen," he said, his eyes narrowing, "you've just violated at least 3 federal anti-discrimination laws, not to mention basic human decency. I'd suggest you stop talking before you make this worse for yourself." But Karen was too far gone. She launched into a rant about property values, community standards, and how she was the only one brave enough to speak the truth. With every word, she dug herself deeper, oblivious to the cameras that were still rolling, capturing every word, every flicker of malice. Within an hour, those videos were everywhere. The neighborhood Facebook group, usually a quiet space for lost cat notices and garage sale tips, exploded with outrage. Screenshots of Karen's tirade spread like wildfire, and within minutes, there were calls for her immediate removal from the HOA board. Parents shared their own stories, snide remarks Karen had made about their children, elderly parents, or anyone she deemed imperfect. Each story was another nail in the coffin of her reputation. By evening, someone had created a petition demanding an emergency HOA meeting. Over 200 signatures poured in within 3 hours. Our community was done with Karen. And honestly, so was I. The emergency meeting was set for the following Tuesday. In the days leading up to it, Karen tried to claw her way out of the hole she'd dug. She sent out emails claiming she'd been misunderstood, that her words were taken out of context. She tried to spin it as a safety concern and efficiency issue. But the videos told a different story. Even her closest allies started to distance themselves. No one wanted to be caught in the fallout of her cruelty. Tuesday finally arrived. The community center was packed to the rafters, standing room only. Usually these HOA meetings barely drew a dozen bored homeowners. This time, it felt like the entire neighborhood had shown up, every single face etched with determination. Karen sat at the front, trying to project an air of calm authority, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She had underestimated us, underestimated the power of a community that wouldn't stand by and let a child be demeaned. The meeting opened with the videos playing on the projector screen. Karen flinched as her own hateful words echoed around the room, the footage undeniable. When it ended, the room erupted in a chorus of demands for her resignation. "This is a witch hunt." Karen shrieked, shooting to her feet so fast her chair toppled over behind her. "I've been HOA president for 5 years, you can't just remove me over one little misunderstanding." That's when Mike Rodriguez stood up again, calm and unflappable, a folder in his hand. "Actually we can," he said coolly. "According to the HOA bylaws, any board member who engages in discriminatory behavior or brings disrepute to the community can be removed by a 2/3 vote. I've also been in touch with the Fair Housing Department, and they're very interested in this video." Karen's face went from red to a ghostly white. For the first time, she seemed to understand that she was out of lifelines. She looked around the room, searching for even a single friendly face, but found only steely glares and crossed arms. The board, eager to distance themselves from the scandal, called for an immediate vote. Hands shot up around the room in a tidal wave of condemnation. I counted maybe 5 people who didn't vote for her removal, and even they looked confused as if they'd lost track of what was happening. But it didn't stop there. The community wasn't satisfied with just removing her from the board. Another vote was called, this one to ban Karen from attending any HOA events or meetings permanently. The motion passed unanimously, a collective exhale of relief. "This is illegal." Karen screamed, her voice cracking as she clutched her purse like a life raft. "You can't ban me from community events. I'll sue every last one of you." Mike merely raised an eyebrow. Actually, we can, he replied evenly. You violated the HOA's code of conduct and our anti-discrimination policy. The ban is entirely within our rights. And given you're already facing potential legal action for violating the Americans with Disabilities Act, I'd advise against threatening further lawsuits. The final blow came when someone mentioned that several local news stations had reached out, eager to report on the story. Karen's employer, a real estate agency that prided itself on inclusivity, was rumored to be very interested in her newfound notoriety. Her face fell, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. The vote is final. Jim Torres, the HOA treasurer who would serve as interim president, said firmly. Karen Mitchell, you are hereby removed from your position as HOA president and banned from all HOA functions indefinitely. This meeting is adjourned. Karen gathered her belongings with trembling hands. She turned one last time to glare at Tommy, her eyes dark with rage. But instead of fear or shame, my son's face was calm, his eyes bright. We were done being intimidated. She stormed out of the community center, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. The next day, a moving truck appeared in her driveway. Within a week, her house was up for sale and Karen was gone from Willowbrook Estates for good. In the aftermath, the neighborhood came together like never before. The next block party had an entire section of adaptive games, donated by local businesses. Tommy was presented with a Community Hero Award for his courage and for showing us all the power of kindness in the face of cruelty. 6 months later, we heard that Karen had tried to rejoin the HOA under her maiden name, apparently thinking no one would notice. The board rejected her application within minutes, sending a polite but firm reminder of her lifetime ban. Her house sold at a significant loss, and rumor had it she'd been blacklisted by every HOA in the county. The memory of that day will always stay with me, the day our community stood up not just for Tommy but for the values we shared: compassion, inclusion, and the belief that every child, no matter their circumstances, deserves to belong. And Tommy? He kept on smiling. Because nothing, not even Karen's cruelty, could steal his joy or the love that surrounded him.